Hi, I'm Bo Sebastian. I am happy to join you today to talk about fear. Why do we even have fear? Is there a positive reason for the presence of fear in our lives? Or is fear always a negative, persistent feeling that doesn't seem to go away? This is the subject I'm going to talk about today. You'll want to join me. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Bo Sebastian from Facebook's Vers la Paz, See the Peace. This talk is also being connected to my stress-free peace channel on YouTube Live. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and also a spiritual coach. I've studied many forms of psychology and have been in practice for over 30 years. I've written 12 books, all of which are available on Amazon.com. Here are a couple. If you want to check them out, I'll put a link in my post. While you're on YouTube, please like and join the pages to see any upcoming live videos like this one, and you'll be able to view hundreds of videos about getting rid of stress and anxiety and taking that secret journey to the meditative, powerful mind. Let's get started. So I was on my meditative walk yesterday morning and I felt a twinge of fear from a conversation that I had had the day before with my lawyer. Of course, lawyers in general cause fear. I think that's the idea. I hope if you're a lawyer out there, you're not causing any fear in anybody's life. But this lawyer working on my case for me had been doing this for about 2 years now. And in fact, every time I think about the case, even though the odds are very much on my side, I still get a sort of a pang in my chest or my stomach. It felt to me, especially this morning during my spiritual walk, like it was a lack of faith or of courage. I know that if I believe what I preach about prosperity and truth, I should be feeling and seeing the truth, which is I'm already prosperous, courageous, and a conqueror. There is no lack in this human being, Bo Sebastian. Still, to keep it real, the conversation with my lawyer yesterday, the day before yesterday, left me with some doubt. And I let that doubt turn into fear, which we all do sometimes. When I go on my walk, I always begin with the prayer and thanksgiving for all that I have and all that I'm going to have, or all that I need to do that day. I want to go into it with the perfect sense of peace, the perfect sense of love and authenticity with my heart, so that I could go to sleep at night with peace as well. So I spoke to Spirit and said, soften the fear in me this morning and carve it out. Take it out completely and replace it with more of you, more of love, more power, more strength, more freedom, more liberty, especially more courage. Take all the fear away. And I was adamant about it. But just like prayer, it should be a conversation. And the first thing I heard back from Spirit, I can't take all that fear away from you. Fear is essential to your human nature. Fear is an innate warning sign that danger is near. If you had no fear, then you would have no regulator inside your humanness to cause you to react or respond quickly in times of danger. There would be no chemical change in your physical self, no fight or flight that would cause you to get away from fear. So that is something that must stay in the human nature. I said, okay, I understand because I work with that every day. Then how do I deal with a particular fear which doesn't have anything to do with impending danger, like being attacked by a wild animal, or like the kind of danger I think Spirit was talking about in the human behavior that we needed to be aware of, like standing too close to a ledge or being in the presence of danger. And this is what I heard from Spirit. And get ready. It's a pretty long explanation. I think this whole concept is going to take about a half an hour. If you have time, you can stop and start the video whenever you want. Spirit said it to me pretty much like this. All is mental. Your beliefs, your truths, your fears are all mental. Take a second to digest that. Even your belief in me is completely mental. Just as my belief in you and my creation and all of the universes are in mind or in spirit. To explain this, Spirit said, I need to share another spiritual law, which is the law of correspondence. What is above is below. What is below is above. That's the law of correspondence. And I think about that a lot. And I think it's very interesting that even as a little kid, I was always really curious about why things were happening on the earth, because I kind of somehow knew that there was a spiritual opposite in heaven happening similarly. So I answered, so does that mean that there's fear in heaven? It's a big one, right? Spirit answered, now that's a paradox, which I'll try to explain with spiritual law. Think about a battery that has two poles, a positive pole and a negative pole. It takes both poles to make the car start. Sometimes scientists have stopped using the term negative pole and started using the term cathode pole because there's nothing negative about the opposite pole on a battery. It's the same thing with fear. When you deal with degrees of fear, it's polarized opposite, which is courage. There's no place on that field of polarization where you can point to and say one of two things. This place has a little more fear, or this place has a little more courage. There's always some place on that. Even if you go to the farthest place of fear and you go one step closer to courage, you can say, this is more courageous, or this has less fear. Or on this side of the coin, this is more fear and less courage. Same thing with the degrees in a thermometer, cold and hot. You're dealing with the same thing. There's no place on that thermometer that isn't a little less cold or a little more hot. It's degrees. So I said the entire polarity of fear and courage exists in heaven then. Again, there was a pause and I heard another paradox. When everything was created in mind to express an objective side of spirit, of life, something apart from perfect love, but still within the mind of spirit, there had to be an I and a me, a subject and a created object. There are many polarized opposites in the world, the objective world that you see around you, all being of the same substance or matter, but of different degree. Some examples: light and darkness, hard and soft, large and small, black and white, sharp and dull, noise and quiet, high and low, positive and negative. The same principle operates on the mental plane with emotions such as love and hate. Two mental states apparently totally different, and yet there are degrees of hate and degrees of love, and a middle point in which we use the term like or dislike, which shades into each other so gradually that sometimes we are at a loss to whether or no we like or dislike something or neither. Again, we're looking at polarized opposites of two things that are on the same polarization, like love and hate, like large and small, quiet and loud. So as for the I and the me, the subject and object of humanity, the I is the doer, and the me is the part of you that is your experience as your humanity, your body, your belongings, your job, your brain, which holds animal behaviors like fear and the feeling of self-preservation, which is operating with different aspects of your brain and chemicals in your physical body that sometimes you can't choose. But you can choose what's happening in your brain. You can choose what's happening in your mind. That is, there's innate places in the human body, but not in your spirit, which is only housed in your physical body. That's where the paradox is. So I said, the fear in my human nature only then. And the human nature is not really spirit. And then I thought, well, how could anything not be spirit when spirit's omniscient and omnipresent? Spirit's everything. That didn't make sense to me. And I felt spirit laugh like, yeah, I knew you were going to ask that next. And spirit said, yes, only the beings who truly evolve can understand this paradox, who truly want to understand more than just living life, more than just making a living, more than just having kids. People who actually want to understand the nature of spirit. And spirit asked me, are you one of those people? Do you truly want to understand? And of course I said, yes, I do. And I do. Okay, spirit said, then let me explain further. In the perfect place of Eden, which is a metaphor where man was created, there was a tree, also metaphoric, just one tree that I asked man not to eat from, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I asked, if the tree existed in Eden or heaven, then that means that the knowledge of good and evil exists in heaven or in God or in spirit. I had no resistance in me about that thought. So I continued, and if you placed the tree there and told man not to eat from it, your intuition was that it was highly possible that man would go and eat from that tree and quite probably plunge him into a world of knowledge of good and evil that led to what we're talking about today, this polarization, this change between absolute perfection and absolute desolation, the change between love and hate, perfect good and perfect evil. Is that correct? Yes, in a way, Spirit said. To take away the sting of death, though, before Adam ate of the tree, he asked to have a helpmate. He asked to have someone that he could perhaps love, enjoy life with, enjoy the things that were created around him. It was then that I put him asleep and created Eve for him. But then there was a long pause. Adam has never awoken from that dream. And all of his descendants and everything around you is still sort of in a dream, even though you're all in it together. The dream and the polarities of good and evil are a lesson, a school of sorts to understand the difference between the perfect and the complete opposite of the perfect. And when the dream is over, all will awaken to perfection. as when you awaken in the morning from a nightmare. You realize it was just in mind, not real. This paradox of fear and the school of fear is like a nightmare that you'll eventually awaken from. And maybe you can awaken from it now. If you're of the right mind, if you're of the right consciousness. And what man has that no creature has on earth is choice. He can choose to not be a party to fear. He can choose to not accept that perfect love and perfect light exist. And he can choose to believe that perfect love is all there is. You get to choose what you want to express here on this earth. Even though we're still in this dream, we're still learning. And we're on levels of learning. Like we are on the absolute no knowledge of God and absolute complete knowledge of God, which is one with God. There's people of all sorts on this earth in those different polarities. Some are polarizing more lovingly, and some are polarizing more on the level of self. If you make choices that are loving and bring peace to yourself and the world, you'll tend to avoid pain and stress in life. You just will. And you'll be able to go to sleep with peace and have a beautiful, restful night. But anyone can attract negativity, even if they're good people. For instance, I had 3 car accidents in 3 months 2 years ago. Did I believe that I attracted those accidents into my life? Did I believe that there was a destiny of sorts? Or was I content to believe that I was in perfect and divine order? But there's 2 parts of me. There's an I and there's a me. The I, the perfect knowledge, the observer of Bo Sebastian, had an inclination that there was a reason, a perfect reason. And I was willing to let go of asking why. But then there was also the Bo Sebastian that was affected chemically by that fight or flight instance, by that PTSD moment. I think in that moment that there was some kind of evil after me, wanting me to not be on this earth at this time, sharing what I know, because I felt like this opposite force wasn't wanting humans to have truth, and that this negative entity knew that I was going to share it no matter what. But ultimately, I couldn't live with that negative feeling. Fear literally took over my life for a little while, especially when I drove. It was hard to get in a car, especially after I started having to have operations and surgeries on my spine. I found out that I had a damaged 3rd vertebra that had to be replaced. And when it was replaced, they had to move my larynx. And when they moved my larynx, it caused me to lose my singing voice. And I had been a trained world-class tenor for years, using my voice all the time. I could barely speak after that operation. So it changed my entire life, which brought about this PTSD feeling, which invited, every time I thought about it, the chemicals that your brain lets off whenever you think about a fearful thought. So I went to a therapist, which I think anybody should do if they have issues, or a spiritual counselor or something. I happened to go to a psychologist. And after a few sessions, she realized that who I was a spiritual person. And to get over my fear, I had to invite more spiritual concepts into this particular process that was going on. And that's exactly what I did. I had to invite a loving, trusting Spirit of God back into my heart and believe that there were higher sources like angels, which I believe in, that protect me from more negativity. I mean, how many times have you been in the car and realized that, I mean, you were like a millisecond away from an accident and you knew that it was not you, it was God, it was something that protected you from it. That to me is angelic intercession. Yet I'm still not sure why all of it happened, having surgeries and losing my voice and everything. This changed my life as I knew it, and I'm still wrestling with managing the changes. I know better not to ask why. That the mental, spiritual part of me knows that there's no answer for that paradox, why life happens. But there's an expectation in me that there is a lesson that will be learned and I'll become stronger and more powerful and more courageous as a result. The different polarity that I'm talking about. So when I want to change the polarity of fear from that lawyer conversation to the polarity of courage that I was just talking about, is there a way that I can superimpose the thoughts, the ideas, or the mental configuration from a negative thought about the lawyer to a positive thought from courage? And I think that there is. I believe that we can, because of choice, because all of life is mental, I think we can go breathe in what I would believe in is a kind of like breathing in perfect love and then allowing that love to expose the place of fear and looking at it, feeling it, and then encouraging that fear up one step on that polarization toward that next step towards courage. And we can do that by mental equivalence, by using something that we were courageous about in our lives before. We can believe and feel that same vibrational pull towards courage with that fear. All of this being said to say that there is a purpose in fear, and it's understanding the power of the two polarities of fear and courage. And all lessons are basically understanding the polarities of whatever it is we deal with on a daily basis in this human realm. We could either be dealing with something that is a shift and change, like a lot of people come to me with the idea of lack and prosperity. I mean, that's an actual physical manifestation. But it's also a mental thought. Lack is in the mind. When lack is in the mind, it's hard to manifest prosperity. So we have to find mental equivalents that change the idea of lack. For me, there was a time where my husband and I, David, were really struggling, and right at that, after we opened, actually we weren't struggling when I opened Hypnosis on My Solace, but when COVID happened, I basically had to close what I just opened, and all of the money that I invested pretty much went away. And I had to believe in that moment that there was no lack. And we rearranged life, my husband and I, so that I closed my side of the business and reopened it in his name. And as a result of that, I was like the only business open on Las Olas During COVID, my office had like 15 feet between my desk and the chair where clients would come in, and I used a mask, and I told people to wear a mask. And during that time, right after COVID, we went from nothing in our account, less than like in debt, way in debt, to like $250,000 in 2 years. And that to me was David and I believing that there was no lack in God, that there couldn't be lack in something that created all of the universes. And as a result of that, we were able to stop renting in Fort Lauderdale, and we moved to Boca Raton. We had a beautiful apartment here now that you're seeing in the background. It's not an apartment, it's a condominium. And we were able to furnish the entire thing with brand new furniture. And that was as a result of mental thinking. We must believe that source is going to change our mind. So I'd love to sum this all up with some scriptures, which, if you're not Christian, the particular scriptures from the New Testament are probably not going to help you at all, but listen to the words of it at least, because they will encourage you. The first reference is in Romans 8:31. If God be for us, who or what can be against us? And so that doesn't say anything about Jesus. It just says if God be for us. And I think Jehovah is the word that was in the Greek. So if God is all there is in the universe, and we're one with God, then there is no power or presence, fear or lack that can be against us. That's number one. And lastly, there was a moment when Spirit was speaking to my heart, an explanation that talked about being in perfect spirit was like waking up from a nightmare. So I found this in Romans 13:11. Now is the time to awaken out of sleep. We know that there's a lot of people around us sleepwalking. We notice there's a lot of people in their nightmares and their anxiety and in their stress. And we have to encourage them and encourage ourselves to awaken from them into a consciousness and into a belief that there's a life apart from that, a God, a spirit, a vibration of love that can transform us from our mind into our tangible lives. I hope that taste of truth in that reality helps you flow into a better place today. Have a beautiful and amazing day. I know I'm going to.